just don't want to do.
God damn.
Well, that was the last of that guy.
Say that again?
Spoilers, by the way. I feel like when a lot of people talk about The Last of Us, they go full tunnel vision on the story. Joel dying this, Abby's buff that, wah wah wah. That I feel like it overshadows a lot of the other purely fantastic aspects of part 2. That I just can't really comprehend a lot of the labels I see being applied to this game. Because there are a lot of excellent aspects to part 2, like the underlying story, the emotional beats, the music. Oh man, the music. The atmosphere, and
Yes.
the gameplay. I don't think I've ever seen so much hate, and it is hate, for anything in the history of anything ever. Except maybe in your average Canadian ice hockey game. You know, the game got leaked, and a lot of people already came in with their mind made up about what the game will be.
Fitting that both Halo 5 is dog shit, and so is Last of Us 2.
I don't even want to fucking play it anymore.
So to a game that demands a lot of open-mindedness from the player, it's a recipe for disaster. You know, I think a lot of the hate comes down to the nature of its release. You know, it's this depressing game about hate, murder, death, and snowball fights. Coming off from the first game, which is about love and protecting those you can come to care about in a harsh world that had lost that form of connection. And it was released during the most depressing year of this millennium so far, about a global pandemic during a global pandemic, when everyone is freaking the fuck out and locked inside. And it got delayed. And it got leaked, and your favourite character died, and you have to play as a woman who beat him to death. It's a game that demanded a lot of curiosity and open-mindedness from the player, and I honestly think it demanded a little too much. Psychologically, it made a lot of gamers go like this. But years later, I kinda ignore the plot, and psychologically, I'm like this. Look at this, man. Look at these blinds, man. Look at the blinds, man. Look at the...
Find out more information.
You know, I think the game really opens up when you get to Seattle after witnessing something so traumatic. It's a nice change of pace where you can just, you know, take in all the greenery and just listen to the sounds, you know.
Fuck.
You know, the birds flying through the trees. Just trotting through a forest that was once a highway while two characters actually talk like real people.
What about those crazy cannibals you said you and Joel ran?
Hey look! A squirrel! I remember as a kid I'd watch those videos of like, this is what the earth will look like in 50 years after the human race fucking dies. Videos. And it's got like wildlife and plants that have grown in and out of buildings. And this game is basically that. It really successfully creates an eerie feeling, like there's a story around every corner, but only a small trace of it is left behind because, you know, everyone is dead. You know, walking through an old coffee shop.
Wasn't Joel all about coffee? Kidding me?
You can go back to the bar.
Watch it!
Yeah, this got me on the first playthrough, can't lie. There's a music store, and I like to just walk around and take it all in. There's a lot of the albums and different posters on the walls, drum kits.
Are you a dragger? Or are you gonna be on my fucking
guitars? The Last of Us Part 2 got to be the first guitar-type game. You know, a lot of people miss this part as well.
Talking away. I don't know what I'm to say. I'll say it anyway. Today's another.
Blows the show version out of the water.
Ellie, cars.
Walking through what used to be a functioning city. Hey look, a bunny.
That's the cutest fucking thing I've ever seen in my entire life.
There's the water. The sounds of the waterfalls.
Looks like an ambush. Check out the bullet holes on the side of this truck.
You can get on your horse and you can just roam wherever in this small open world level.
Damn, that's pretty good.
Ellie's got a map, which is one of the best maps in gaming. When Ellie reaches different landmarks, she whips it out and scribbles on it. Then folds it up and puts it back in her backpack. But look at this map. Look at the way it folds and everything. The Last of Us Part 2 got to be the first map type game. There's this truck with Fedra soldiers that got burned up.
Whoa.
With a letter which tells us what happened. There's the remains of an attempted bank robbery that went wrong because the robbers planned it on the day of the outbreak. And some of the clickers are wearing body armor.
What's with the body armor?
So you go into the bank vault and you see what would be every working man's dream. You know, millions of dollars, but it's all just diluted to nothing. Military trucks, military vehicles. There are Fedra tents still up. There's this thing, which Ellie has not seen in a while.
Haven't seen one of these in a while.
Wanted posters all over the place. There's a tank even. Which leads me to today's sponsor, World of Tanks. I'm just kidding. There's Joe Rogan's house, even the horse. You know, you can see the muscle striations bend and flex and respond to the terrain it walks on. So many little details you miss or get easily overshadowed by a guy screaming in your ear because there are two lesbians in the game.
Fucking pronoun! No, no, no!
Some of those almond things left if you're hungry.
You know, what's crazy about this part is that if you just wait and don't go for your rifle, there's a different animation for getting knocked out. There was no need to do that, but Naughty Dog, you know, they did it anyway.
I love this part too. You can actually carve JJ's initials into the tree here, right? But, you know, and you come back, still there. But let's say you ignore that, you know, you don't go put JJ's initials on there. You can come to the tree later and guess what? It's not on there. The Last of Us Part 2 got to be the first carving your initials into a tree type game.
I think I've played this game like 6 times now, and every time I start the game, I know what's coming. And, you know, you dread it every time.
What's this?
Ollie?
Max Rebo? Nah, I'm putting this shit back.
But after Joel gets killed like that, and that music kicks in, I just get pulled right back in, man. Like, goddamn.
I thought I was out. They pulled me back in.
I'm Batman. Justice. I'm Batman. The gameplay is so dynamic, man. That's really the best way to describe it. It's like 4D chess, but you play as John Wick's daughter.
How did you die like that?
You gotta take the time to plan out and find where the enemies are and get a plan together in your head.
Fucker!
Otherwise, if you rush in, you are pretty likely to die. Gruesomely. Painfully. So you need to have a plan.
I still have a plan!
Man, I love this level right here too, man. Alright, I have a plan. Here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna place a trap mine right here. Then I'm gonna get up to the top of that monorail and snipe these guys. Let me just, gotta climb up this, gotta use this rope.
Right.
And now we wait. We play the waiting game. I know how this works. One of the guys is gonna come down and then I'm gonna kill him. And then another guy's gonna come and investigate, and then bam. All right, let me get this guy. All right, now this guy. Absolute cinema. You've got many different factions in this game, each with something unique to bring to the table. You know, the Seraphites use whistles. The Rattlers get clickers and chain them up for their own amusement. The WLF are kinda a more hyperactive and tense evolution of what the Fireflies would have become. Then there's the Infected too, which are easier to outsmart. But much harder to deal with if you get spotted. They run and move sporadically, and the closer they get, the harder it is to get a clean headshot. You've got the bloaters, of course, stalkers, clickers, these new guys that fart on you. I love doing this too, man. You can actually grab a guy and feed him to a clicker. Like, look at that. A lot of other games just seem to throw as many random enemies at you that all do the same thing, and there's no harmony or rhythm to how you can go about it. But in The Last of Us Part 2, each combat encounter truly feels like a puzzle you have to solve, especially on the harder difficulties. You know, the harder the difficulty, the less resources you have, meaning the harder the combat puzzle, meaning the smarter you have to go about things. One of my favourite things to do is to whack on the infinite ammo mod and whip out the explosive dynamite arrow and just go ham.
Fuck! Dina, we gotta run!
No, we don't. Something I think always goes largely unnoticed in not just games, but movies and TV shows as well is sound design.
Snowy. Barn time.
When it works, you don't think to pick up on it, but only when it fails is when it becomes obvious.
Very easy to get wrong and noticed for the wrong reason. Very difficult to get right. But when you get it right, no one's going to pat you on the back for it.
But if you just take a moment to relax and take in your surroundings, you realize that there are so many just immersive sound effects in The Last of Us Part 2. Rustling of leaves, whistles of an enemy, clicks of a clicker, farts of a farter, the slices of your knife, when you smack someone's skull, the creaks of your bow as you slowly cock the arrow, the little click of the hammer when you pull it down on your revolver. You don't even need the code to open the safes in the game. You can actually hear the different clicks for the right number. All of this audibly tricks you in all of the right ways. Right, wrong, good, bad. These are simple concepts, but it's in the grey areas in which things get interesting. However, the plot is pretty poorly laid out and presented, mostly. Although I love this game and the story it tells, I just can't get behind its structure. But something I think it does really well is the subtle storytelling.
Let me explain.
Both Abby and Ellie encounter different things in their 3 days in Seattle that reflect their own inner turmoil, but it's not directly spelled out for you. You know, The Last of Us Part 2 is not really a revenge story, but it's really about grief and the trauma that lingers and can come back to bite you in the ass. One of the things that really stood out to me is the story of the Prophet, which in Ellie's experience is only seen a couple of times on wall murals.
His storm is relentless, but she guides us through the rough seas to...
But in Abby's campaign, we learn a bit more about this mysterious prophet. You know, I think this prophet, who became a martyr for her people...
I wonder if your prophet had any idea what she was starting.
She saved dozens of people. In ways no one can explain.
Is a parallel to what Ellie would have become if she martyred herself for the cure at the end of the first game. Her sacrifice would have been noble, but likely would have just funded more war and bloodshed. You know, they get a cure, but then what? You know, Marlene only wanted the cure to eventually overthrow Fedra, so how noble of a cause is it really?
You just come after
Fuck you. The WLF are what the Fireflies would have eventually become, and the game shows us this with many parallels. Wanted posters, dedicated leaders, noble intentions. You know, both fought Fedra, but again, only the WLF succeeded, and look how they turned out. And if they turned out like that, then the Fireflies would have followed that same disillusioned path. Maybe I'm stretching it, but I think it's pretty obvious once you connect to the dots. I rest my case. Then there's Abby. Abby encounters the Rat King, which is this large fucking horrific beast, and when killed, a stalker clicker thing splits off and runs away to punish Abby later. You know, Abby in her head built up the idea of Joel as this ruthless animal and savage that killed her father. I mean, Joel could have actually just knocked out the guy, you know, he didn't need to shoot him in the head or with an arrow or burn him alive or fill his chest with lead like fucking Scarface. And Ellie is a detachment of Joel that, after Abby killed, came back to bite her in the ass. Even the setting, you know, Abby delving into a hospital as if she is facing her fear of that fateful day to confront the thing that destroyed her life. But I do think people forget that this game is fucking terrifying, actually. The hospital sequence with Abby is just a perfect lesson in horror and immersion. The way it slowly builds up to the Rat King boss fight is just absolute cinema. It sends you deeper and deeper into the hospital in search of this trauma kit. And, you know, okay, obviously there's this bloater or something down here, but when you see the fucker, your heart sinks. The concept is based on a real life phenomenon. How some rats get their tails intertwined into a perfect circle. In its own weird way, it's crazy how nature can produce something like that, but it's disturbing at the same time. There's a certain level of beauty about the cordyceps fungus, you know, the way it blossoms, man. It looks beautiful, but terrifying at the same time. To see something like this grow in a place that was once populated by people, man. This is what happens when you sleep over at Asmongold's house. From the moment Abby goes down into the fungus-infested hospital, the environment tells a story of chaos. It's a remnant of the confusion of the outbreak. It's kinda like a time capsule. Nothing has changed since day one of the outbreak 25 years ago, so the environment tells you a story. The blood-smeared floors, abandoned surgical tools and medical equipment. Then you try and open a door and hear this.
Fuck is that?
Bodies on hospital beds that have been taken over by the cordyceps. It gives you enough information for you to piece together how it went down, and your imagination fills in the gaps. I love that about this game, man. There are so many hidden stories in the world that you gotta seek out to explore, picking up notes left behind from survivors, environmental details that just make you sad. Like this letter some kid wrote to Santa asking for a dog to protect him from the infected. There's actually an entire secret hidden story in the Hillcrest section about this guy called Boris the Bow Hunter. It all started when I found a group of infected who were locked in this small garage, which sparked my curiosity because how does one even get themselves in this situation?
Looks like they've been locked in here for years.
But as you explore the level more thoroughly, you piece together the story which could have been an entire 11 to 15 hour bonus Last of Us spin-off game. Crazy. They should have never adapted the story from the game.
I'm gonna be a dad.
But picked one of these side stories and spun that into its own mini-series.
I feel bad for this guy too. This guy just probably wanted to finish painting his Warhammer 40k figurines, his Necrons or whatever, I don't know the lore. And then he probably died. Guy's even got a PS3 set up. Look at that. I love this too. You can actually see where he probably bought the set from. Look at this.
Oh, I love that, man. That there are so many hidden stories scattered across the game. Like in this ferry that crashed onto the rocks near the aquarium. Or the two infected clickers that Joel and Ellie find during their flashback sequence in the motel. Or my favourite, how you find a small group of WLF deserters. Which of course, now that I know how they spawn, can deal with them pretty quickly. The animations, man. Rope animations. Look at the rope physics, man. Just look at the rope. The glass, man. You know, every time I see the glass, I'm breaking it. I don't care. Swimming. You know, the gun animation, the reloading. Upgrading a weapon. Just listen to the sound of the rifle, man, as it cocks back like that. The acting is so good you forget these people aren't really real. Something I feel gets largely swept under the rug is the cinematography. Because it's a game and not a movie, people forget about bringing it up, but a lot of the framing of certain sequences is very intentional. Like, look at this. You've got Ellie here, who is tied up. Then you've got this dickhead in the center of the frame in the background, choking Dina. Then you've got your knife perched on top of the chair. It shows you what the objective is in the background, what you need to get it on your right, and the obstacle directly in your way on the left. The music though, man, the music. I never hear anyone talk about it, but this has got to be one of the best OSTs out there, man. So much emotion. You can hear it in the rustic vibe when fingers scratch the guitar strings. Where a lot of other soundtracks aim to sound otherworldly and visceral, which is fantastic in their own way, don't get me wrong. You know, The Last of Us is very human in its soundtrack. You know, it makes me feel like this. Joel's last ride, man, you know, when Unbroken's playing in the background. It's the last time you play as him, riding off into the sunset. Just, man. Just gets you into the feels, brother. Guy's a genius, man. If The Last of Us Part 2 were to be a movie, it would be The Dark Knight Rises. Now, to anyone who's seen The Dark Knight Rises, you know what I'm talking about. The plot makes no fucking sense. These characters decide to make the dumbest choices imaginable, which would be so out of character for what type of person they are. Its plot beats are based all around convenience. How did Bruce get back to Gotham? How did this doctor just magically fix his back after it went through this? Why would you send your entire police force into a sewer system? That nuke is nowhere near far away enough, and The Last of Us Part 2 is no different. A lot of its plot just kind of happens out of convenience, and you just have to accept that it happens even though it makes no sense. There's no reason why you wouldn't kill Ellie and Tommy here. You know, you've already done something so cruel and evil. Not killing off two loose ends is stupid. Why would you send a heavily pregnant woman into a war zone? So many logical inconsistencies of things happening out of pure luck a lot of the time. Oh, there just so happened to be a pool there to stop the fall. How convenient.
Are you telling me that a man just happens to fall like that? No!
Oh, you got shot in the head? Nope, it just grazed the side of your skull. How convenient. Oh, you just so happened to run into Joel and Tommy while they're out there on patrol. How convenient. Ellie doesn't actually know Abby, so there's no reason why it's acting like she does. But the game assumes that Ellie does know Abby because we got to know her, but she only encountered her twice before. First time when she killed her surrogate dad and forced her to watch. Second time when she killed the father of her girlfriend and shot her surrogate uncle and forced her to watch. So when you have so much of the plot to rely on convenience, it can become impossibly difficult to take seriously. But if you ignore all of that, like The Dark Knight Rises, and just feel it, rather than trying to understand it, it all becomes much clearer.
I'd say don't try to understand it, just feel it.
Bruce rising out of the pit, you feel the emotion. Ellie unable to play the guitar, you feel the emotion. Bruce coming back as Batman, you feel the emotion. Abby finally having conquered her nightmare of her dad, you feel the emotion. Alfred saying goodbye to Bruce, you feel the emotion. Ellie finally remembering the last words she and Joel shared, you feel the emotion. Bane punching this random column for no reason, you feel the emotion. Its emotional beats hit way harder than any logical plot could have, in my opinion. It's a type of story that really prioritizes emotion over plot, and for better or for worse, that makes it stand out a lot. It's grown on me. It's not the best game I've ever played, but it definitely is one of my favorites, despite its flaws.
I guess you guys aren't ready for that yet. But your kids are gonna love it.